Hello everyone, and welcome to my reflected video for the HITO Evaluativo 3. Well, about the contextual factors, during this semester I completed my professional practice at Colegio Einstein de Coronel, a subsidized private school located in Coronel. Well, the school offers only secondary education from primero to cuarto medio and has an approximate enrollment of 280 students, and it is divided into 2 classes per grade level, and the school has a supportive learning environment with access to technological resources, for example, such as projectors, a computer lab, internet connection, and programa PIE for the students who need it. Well, and about the needs analysis for this reflective assignment, it was implemented in a primero medio class composed of students aged between 14 to 15, and their English level ranged mostly between A1 and some students with A2 in an intermediate level. Although there were important differences in confidence and proficiency among them, but overall they were very, in some way, enthusiastic, but they needed structured support in some way to engage in activities or communicative tasks. Well, about the identification of learning needs, the needs analysis was essential, very important in helping me to understand my students' profiles. In this case, most students express confidence in introducing themselves, with a total of 23 students, and expressing likes and dislikes, a total of 19 students. In this case, confirming initial A1 competence. However, a small group still struggle with these basic skills. And about learning preferences, here they could, in this part of the needs analysis, they could select more than one option. For example, 18 students prefer games and fun activities to learn or to use English, while only 6 prefer reading, writing, and another 6 indicated videos as an important tool. And interestingly, only 2 students like work group, which challenged my beliefs about collaborative learning and for future activities in this case. Most students, 22 of 25, reported that English was important for achieving their goals, mainly for travel or communication. However, a few mentioned that English was unnecessary for their future plans, or not a really important tool for their future lives in this case. And 4 students mentioned not having all the materials needed, and 1 student expressed that motivation was a personal barrier. So this is something very, very important in the results of the needs analysis. And a surprising finding that I had is that some of the strongest students in English in this case did not mention English or did not list English as their favorite subject, which suggests that the ability in this case is not necessarily equal in intrinsic motivation, right? About the alignment with the course objectives, the needs analysis influence and help me with the formulation of my unit aims. And since students showed a preference for interactive and audiovisual content, I try to ensure my aims to be more emphasized in oral production, listening comprehension, and language use, using more interactive methods. And given their English level and the units discussed with my teacher in the establishment, I implemented objectives such as, well, describing personal preferences and experiences, um, participating in short guided activities such as short conversations or quizzes, and understanding key information from simple videos. We used a lot of videos in different classes, taller de inglés, for example. And also the needs analysis confirmed that my lessons needed to be more engaging or more supported to increase participation. So I tried to do that as well as I could, but it wasn't always that simple given the level of English of my students and their levels of motivation in this case. Well, about the adaptation of content and materials, then its analysis shaped the materials I could select for my activities, because students prefer, as I mentioned before, fun activities and audiovisual support. I incorporated, for example, short videos or short clips for listening or different activities. I also use infographics or digital presentation and simplified text for the readings. And I also implemented gamified tasks such as Quizlet, Kahoot, online worksheets, Wordwall, and so on. And however, every week we had this class called Taller de Inglés, and it was mandatory to use worksheets to work every class. So I tried to adapt those worksheets to use them with, for example, videos, as I mentioned before, listenings, reading, and try to gamify them a bit. And for example, for students lacking materials at home, I ensure everything, every worksheet or material was provided during class, and this allowed students to participate equally and try to align with inclusive principles. Well, about the differentiation strategies to ensure accessibility for all students, I apply the universal design for learning, or UDL principles. For example, I implemented multiple means of representation, as I mentioned before, visuals, videos. I tried to implement gestures and interactive examples, and multiple means of engagement. For example, games, quizzes, and some reflexive activities. I also implemented multiple means of expression. For example, we use a lot of oral reading activities and digital formats, and as in the online presentations that I used. And for example, students with lower confidence or competence in English receive extra scaffolding, such as, for example, sentence starters or additional personalized support and practice. And yeah, I know it's a lot of work, but I believe it worked well for this course, for this class, for example. And this approach allowed every student to engage meaningfully according to their abilities and preferences in some way. Well, about the assessment and feedback, and the needs analysis also helped me with my choice of assessment methods, because students were comfortable with interactive methods or tasks. I use formative assessments like exit tickets or game-based quizzes. I also use self-assessment in some way to promote metacognition. And well, this self-assessment was not that structured, but I think it was helpful because they could identify their weaknesses and strengths. And finally, I implemented short oral assessments that were like linked with communicative aims, for example. And I was constantly given immediate feedback. I was also constantly encouraging my students, and I tried to focus on progress that rather than errors, and I believe that improved my students' confidence and participation. And another thing I did, which I don't really know if it is recommended, but it was to encourage each student in some classes, obviously, to come up to the board to solve exercises, and therefore receiving immediate and personalized feedback for every student. But I personally believe that it worked because they were all willing to come up to the board and do the exercises, and they obviously received that immediate feedback. But again, I don't know if this method is really recommended. Well, about the cultural and linguistic considerations, the needs analysis showed that many students valued English mainly for travel opportunities or global communication. However, the needs analysis showed that some students studied English by the only objective of getting or obtaining decent grades, which demonstrates that considerable levels of extrinsic motivation among some students. And so in this case, I integrated topics related to international youth culture, for example, movies, music, and videos for different English contexts. And I also consider linguistic challenges, such as limited vocabulary to express opinions, or difficulties forming complete written or spoken sentences, which was a common problem in this class. And to address these challenges, I incorporated, for example, vocabulary games and activities that mix skills. For example, listening and writing, reading and speaking. For example, and I also implemented several games and interactive activities. As I mentioned before, I hold quizzes and a lot of videos. Well, about the reflection of the effectiveness of this planned unit, well, I previously implemented a unit that contained a lot of, to say it somewhere, too much theory and information, and I made the mistake of using activities that overuse or make an excessive use of formulas and structures. And in addition, I implemented all that information and theory in a single test, so it was to be expected that an important number of students would not get the best grades or results. So I tried to correct those mistakes for the next unit, and the unit was effective. And this new unit, this next unit was I believe it was effective, and the result reflected the results reflected an improvement considering the previous unit and its results. And I could mention some strengths, for example. And it was compared to the previous unit. Now students showed high engagement, especially during game or video based activities, as well as in real life activities related to real life situations. And their speaking confidence increased. For example, most were able to produce short dialogues with me in this case, especially when they were asked to come to the board and solve some exercises. And well, because I suppose they felt more confident talking to me in front of them. And also I could mention that the learning environment felt more dynamic for this unit and more supportive with the students who need it. And some challenges and adjustments that I could implement is that some students continue to struggle with independent tasks and maintaining a real focus on the class. And that, I think, is my biggest problem in my class, to have all my students interest and attention for longer periods of time. And that is obviously something that I must work on in the future, in future opportunities or in future classes as a teacher. Well, and finally, for continuous improvement, I could say that this semester was very important in shaping my professional identity as a teacher. For example, some important perception that I gained, I could mention that the importance of the differentiation of the inclusive practice, especially in my classroom with students of different proficiency or different levels of English. And also I can mention the need to increase environments in which the students feel more motivated in this case, which I think it helps them to pay more attention and makes the class in general more participatory, and the results for students improve in the time. And some areas for future growth, I can say that improving my ability to implement, in this case, real communicative tasks and implement the use of real life situation in activities, or for example project-based learning. That is something that I also have to work on for future opportunities. And also I could mention the developing of strategies for managing mixed proficiency levels in my classes, and a more effective classroom management to make, as I said, my class more, in some way, more enjoyable and balanced between teacher and students, and not only the teacher talking. As well as I need to obtain better attention and motivation from my students. And well, despite not being a process that I would call perfect, I think, as well as being very exhausting experience nothing compares to the results and experience and lessons that I learned throughout this training process. So I feel that I have improved substantially when I compare my performance today to what was on my first day, for example, of professional practice. And being aware of this improvement motivates me and makes to look forward to what comes ahead in this profession. So well, thank you for watching my reflecting video, and goodbye. Thank you.